everybody. Are we all ready to ask Doug Wead some questions? Hi. All right, cool. So I also have with me Josh Tolley, who's going to come up here and help me out. Josh.
Hey, how's it going?
How you doing tonight? Good?
I'm doing great. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. I'm doing well. Are you ready to bring Doug up here?
I am.
All right, let's do this.
Hey, cool. Good to see you.
Good to see you too.
Thanks for joining. So, I guess are you ready?
I'm not hearing you.
Okay.
Let me see if my earplugs will work. Okay, now try. Oh, now I hear you, I think.
Ah, perfect.
There we go. How's that? Good?
Good. That's good.
Awesome. So we have a bunch of questions from all these grassroots supporters of Ron Paul that are just dying to get a piece of your brain and pick your brain a little bit. The first question I have to ask is, we're all fighting for Tampa. We're all going down to Tampa. We're going to have Paul Festival in Tampa. There's going to be hundreds of thousands of us down there pledging for liberty and for the good doctor. And, the campaign's come out and kind of pretty much thrown in the towel and said that they don't think there's a chance that they can win. We don't really think that that's true. What are your thoughts?
First, let me get your names again so I can talk to you.
My name is Tracy Diaz.
Tracy, great to meet you.
Nice to meet you too.
Josh Tolley, Doug.
And Josh, yeah, you've interviewed me before. Tracy and Josh, thanks a lot. And let me say before I discuss this with you, asking me questions implies I have the answers, and I don't, but I'm glad to share my thoughts on some of these questions and points of discussion, and I love reading the forums and learning from other people, so I offer my perspective with humility and respect to the field and to brighter minds than mine that are laboring for Ron Paul. But so the question is, why does it appear that the campaign has thrown in the towel for winning the nomination? If we can win it, I'm all for it. I would love to see us win it. I think when people in the field count the delegates, they may count them without including some of the primary battles. They're just large sections of the country that we didn't compete in because we didn't have the money to compete in them. And we've got some delegates there. They're called stealth delegates by some on the forums, but not the majority. And what happens in these conventions is once somebody has the majority, they can pretty much control it, usually. If Rick Santorum had not collapsed and Newt Gingrich had not collapsed, we were about to shock the world because we had far more delegates than they knew we had or ever dreamed we would have, and there would have indeed been a brokered convention. I warned about that very early because in American history that hasn't happened in recent years. It used to be the norm, but things happen at the speed of light today, and with the internet, convention by convention, cycle by cycle, it's going even faster. Just as in the stock market, when people anticipate what's going to happen over the next 30 days, that's already built into the stock market. By the time ordinary people like you and I get involved, the stock market's already reacted to what's going to happen next. Well, so with the delegates, we could anticipate where these delegations were likely to go based on what happened in the voting and at the precincts in those caucuses and the primary delegates. So I haven't given up. You know, if somebody can help us find a way to win, I'm all for it. I would love it.
Do you think that Santorum and Gingrich dropped out purposefully to stop a brokered convention from happening?
Could be, could have been a personal. What he said, Santorum said his daughter, was it, or son, one of his children that was ill, and for their sake, that's possible too. There are some things that happen in public life that we just don't know right away. I'm a historian, and I can tell you there are things we're learning about FDR right now that is just absolutely fascinating that nobody would have dreamed back in his day were going on. So there's a lot of things we don't know about the personal lives of some of these public figures and why they do what they do. But can it be conspiratorial? Hey, absolutely, it can. We're talking about money and power, and where there's money and power, nothing would surprise me.
Different than what we've seen in previous elections, where in previous elections both parties kind of followed that whole delegate process. They said, okay, well, this guy is obviously going to be the guy who has the most delegates, so let's just kind of get behind the candidate and roll forward. Obviously, this candidate is a lot different than that, and we have delegates who refuse to roll over and play party politics. When this happens, what's then the campaign's approach to this? Because the delegates that you're having come on behalf of Ron Paul to Tampa, they're not going to get behind Mitt Romney. So that's obviously something different than in years past. What's your approach to that? And if there is that ability for you to gain delegates, considering Rule 40, Rule 38, and the national media's coverage of, legally nobody's really bound anyway, wouldn't there be a power play for your campaign then to make headway into that arena?
We're not going to announce what we're going to do in advance. If we had done that, we wouldn't, back when many people in the field wanted us to do it, we wouldn't be in the position we're in now. Some of the people in the field who are criticizing us because we aren't announcing what we're going to do right now are some of the same people who were criticizing us months ago when we first said we were going to concentrate on getting delegates instead of trying to win primaries. Winning primaries, we're up against companies that own television networks that give us 89 seconds in an hour televised debate. They give more time to their own anchors than they do to Dr. Paul. It's pretty stupid for us to try to compete in that arena. We needed $40–50 million to do it. So the campaign was very wise to garner its resource and concentrate on getting delegates. Obviously, we have a reason behind getting those delegates, and we're not going to announce it. Now, when you keep saying, Josh, you keep saying that this candidate is different, were you referring to Romney is different, and therefore the Ron Paul people don't want to buckle under, or that Ron Paul is different, and therefore the Ron Paul people don't want to give up?
What I'm saying is the Ron Paul candidacy is different than the Mitt Romney candidacy, or even if we went back to Bush and we went back to Reagan, Ron Paul has done something that's fairly unique. The reason we are here tonight is because people have kind of developed this awareness because of Ron Paul's positions over the past 30 years. So people who are aware of what the Constitution is supposed to be, what liberty is supposed to be, what freedom is supposed to be, they're just not going to get behind a candidate that is the antithesis of that. And the GOP, in my opinion, has made a huge mistake not realizing the wave they rode in 2010. But irregardless, we're in a position now where you have delegates that aren't going to just roll over and get behind the candidate, and you have a million plus voters who are not just going to roll over and get behind that candidate. So we're facing a unique position, and I understand you can't discuss strategy, but the fact that you said we're not going to announce what we're going to do implies that you're going to do something, which just made 289 people in this room very happy.
Well, I'm sorry, go ahead, Tracy.
No, I was going to say there's 290 because I'm really happy also.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's Ron Paul and there's the rest of them. I mean, once the lights go on, once you get a little picture of the monetary system and how it works, there's no going back. And once you have a little bit of that understanding, everything else you see on TV is just irrelevant. It's just stunning. It's just hours and hours and hours of debating this nuance or that nuance when the whole thing's heading for a crash. It's just ridiculous. Who cares about all these nuances when our whole future as a republic is at stake, when the U.S. Constitution is hanging by a thread? It's just absurd. I was at MSNBC and I was in the makeup room. The lady was doing my makeup and we got to discussing this, and on television, Obama came on television talking about some issue or other issue, and she looked at me and just rolled her eyes. Like, it's just hours and hours of television commentary that are totally irrelevant in light of the bigger issues, including the issue of our monetary system and how it's being run, how the money's being doled out to insiders. Seems like the left and the right, that discussion's gone. It died with the Cold War. There is no left or right. Right. And that was positions that people took, the fear of communism. And so, yes, some people on the right would move left if it would get more votes to help them defeat communism. And communism, people on the left would be more tolerant and charitable towards communism if there were some ideas they had in common. That whole thing's gone. It's no longer left or right. Everybody's on the left, and it's no longer left or right. It's no longer up or down. It's not class warfare, rich against the poor. It's in or out. There's a percentage of insiders, and there's all the rest of us who are outsiders. And the outsiders are getting screwed. They have to pay taxes. The insiders don't have to pay taxes. The outsiders have nowhere to put their money. They can't put it in land. They can't put it in the stock market. There's nowhere to put it. The insiders can put it anywhere, and it'll prosper. They buy their stocks before they go on the stock exchange, or they buy them and then go in and vote to determine whether they go up or down. It's an insider-outsider game, and that's why a lot of these people on the Wall Street, Occupy Wall Street, a lot of us in the Liberty Movement had things in common with them. We could say there is a 1%. It's just that there's a little more to the story than corporate cronyism. There's also the corruption of the monetary system.
So going forward here, obviously Tracy's going to have a question about going forward. We know how we've gotten to the place we've gotten. We know that this is a candidacy which has ridden a wave as opposed to played the political system. So Tracy, how do we move forward from here, right?
Yeah, I actually did have another question that was really popular. I do want to talk about moving forward. I think it's really, really important. What I wanted to go back to it, and what you were just speaking about kind of lends itself to it, is, the insiders don't like this message of freedom and liberty very much because that threatens their ability to be inside, so to speak. So there's a lot of fraud and stuff like that, as far as delegates go. And there was actually a foundation made. It's called Lawyers for Ron Paul. And I'm wondering, because they came out saying that you were quoted in an article saying that, you were working with them. I forget the exact quote. And then you came out and said, I was never, I didn't have this conversation. What is the campaign's affiliation, if any, with this group? Do you think that it's a good thing that they're doing, challenging, some sort of fraud or anything that happens as far as delegation goes? And do you know if this could hurt the Ron Paul campaign and their delegates moving forward, or if it's a help?
Well, my commitment is to Ron Paul, and I have great respect and love and sympathy and interest and a sense of camaraderie with everybody in the field that's doing their thing. But since my commitment is to Dr. Paul, Jesus said a house divided against itself can't stand. So Ron Paul has lawyers that he trusts, that he's known and worked with and vetted, and they advise him. And so my loyalty is to his campaign and to the movement, but to his campaign, because I don't know this other group.
So if there is this other group that's outside your campaign and you have your campaign lawyers advising you one way, yet there's another group of lawyers going a different direction, that obviously has some impact on the campaign itself, especially when you have a candidate that has such an aware following as yours does. Because unlike Mitt Romney, where they support him out of blindness, your supporters are in the system. Your supporters want to be engaged in the process. So how do you, as a campaign manager, how do you address this issue where you have two distinct groups vying for the same candidacy then?
I'm not a campaign manager. I'm running coalitions. So John Tate's campaign manager and Jesse Benton is campaign chairman. And so I don't know how they're going to handle it. But I do know my loyalty is to Dr. Paul, and I trust him and I trust his judgment. I mean, Dr. Paul may not be perfect, but he's about as good as I found. I mean, I saw him criticized the other day because he took Social Security. I couldn't believe that. They still don't get it. I mean, it's his money. He put it in Social Security all those years, so it's his money. It's not like he's taking money from taxpayers or something. But I trust him as much as I trust anybody. I ran for Congress, and I was leading in the election. I won the primary. I was leading in the election, and it was out in the West Coast in Arizona. And when the people on the East Coast went to bed that night, they thought I'd won because that was the reports. So the next morning when I woke up, I had lost. But the next morning when I woke up, on the telephone were all of these messages, one after another after another. And you know who they were? They were all lobbyists, hundreds of lobbyists. As soon as you get elected to Congress, that's what would have happened to me. I know it looking back on it. I'm ashamed to say it. But what would have happened is I would have gone to Congress, and there would have been a handful of things I really believe in, and nobody could sway me on those. But there would be 60,000 other things, and I would just, I don't really care one way or the other, so I would go the way that the lobbyists told me to go because they'd give me the money to get reelected. And I don't even know that, I see now, after meeting Dr. Paul and seeing how he conducted his life and his career, that that's wrong, but I wouldn't have seen it wrong at the time. So I'm telling you, I've never met anybody like him. It's not like there's a handful of people on Capitol Hill like Dr. Paul, and then there's the rest. There's only one, and that's him. So he's not perfect, but he's as close to it as anybody I've ever seen on Capitol Hill. So I trust his judgment, and I've argued with him about things, and he's the only person I know that's changed my mind. I'm sure there's many, but he's the only one I'm aware of who's changed my mind on the issues. So I respect him a great deal.
And I think people on this can say that very same thing, that because of his position and his ability to stand with integrity on the issues for 30 plus years, they have changed positions too. But as somebody who's been involved in political campaigns prior and somebody who studies history, what's the position then with this other organization? Because we still have that question out there. There's people who are like me and Tracy out here in the real world that is seeing this division, and we're seeing this group that's trying to act on behalf of that campaign, so that obviously will affect in some way, shape, or form at least a strategy or a PR perspective from your campaign. So how do we take that then? How do you want people to react to the fact that even though they're not the people you agree with, they're not Ron Paul's counsel, there's still this organization that's doing this on behalf of the campaign.
Well, people can do whatever they want. I mean, that's Ron Paul's the last person to order people around. But
right.
If you want to help him and you believe in him and you believe in his cause, you'll patiently follow him and respect his silences as well as his words, and understand that there's reasons for it. There's a time for it. There's a time to speak and a time to be silent. And he's just gone through a very grueling campaign. Most 76-year-old men get a little rest after mowing the lawn. This guy's been running for president. So I'm very impressed with what he's done. I'm very impressed with the 80% of this country that wants to audit the Federal Reserve. The cat's out of the bag. There's no going back. Corruption will continue, but it's going to have to find a different way to do it because people have caught on. And we owe that to Ron Paul.
We owe a lot to Ron Paul. My next question for you quickly is about the convention itself and bound delegates. You're a historian. Are those delegates bound, or are they going to just be able to do what they want and vote their conscience? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, my thoughts are that our Constitution has been compromised by the two-party system. That's my thoughts. But I realistically know that I'm not going to be able to change that. I guess Jefferson couldn't, and they couldn't, and the parties began to develop and form in early American history, and so I wish it weren't so. But the courts, as you know, treat parties like private clubs, and I don't agree with the courts either. But I have to live in the United States of America, and I have to compete under the same rules and the same playground that my opponents are competing on. Well, here's how it relates to the delegates. The Republican Party, when those delegates get to the RNC, if one candidate has a majority, they can pretty well do what they want. If they can take over the Rules Committee and the Credentials Committee and some of those committees, they can disqualify delegations. They've done it all the time. I mean, when I grew up years ago, when they had conventions, they were always taking duly elected delegations from states and disqualifying them and then seating their own. Once they have control, they can do what they want, and if they have 2/3 control, look out. They can rewrite the rules. So that's what we're up against. And understand, this isn't just a contest for the nominee. This is a contest for the future of America. This is these insiders, their piggy bank is at stake. Trillions of dollars is at stake here. So when you see these videos and see broken bones over a delegate here or there, you get the idea that this is a little more serious than it appears in the news media. As it's just a contest in the news media. It's the blue team against the red team. There's nothing philosophical or substantive about it.
Well, just a quick follow-up to that then, just for clarification. When people get to Tampa, are we operating on the rules that were passed on the last convention? Or do the Rules Committee then change the rules halfway through this convention, and then the process is operated under that new set of rules? Because some people are thinking, well, if we go by the last convention's rules, then they've actually opened up a door for the Paul campaign. And then other people are saying, well, the new Rules Committee gets to place the rules in place for this nomination process. So I really don't know. So I'm just kind of curious. Do you know, do we operate off of last time's rules, or?
Look, I think most of your viewers and most of us in the liberty movement understand and see that the U.S. Constitution is hanging by a thread, that it's openly violated every day, that just a few years ago a president of the United States had to have a judge's signature before he could tap your telephone. Now he can kill you without a judge's signature. And if the U.S. Constitution is that loose, just imagine how loose the rules are for the Republican National Convention. Mm-hmm. I mean, they're like the rules at youth camp. You know, in bed by 10 o'clock and can't sneak out of the dorm, and you can't have candy past midnight, and good luck at enforcing rules. But
there's a lot of
so anything can happen. Anything can happen.
Good.
Well, that's a good answer.
What about Ron Paul accepting a VP nod? Do you think that that's something that he'll do? Everyone in the room is asking.
It isn't going to be offered, and he doesn't want to be VP. He wants to change America. He wants to end the corruption in America, where a few people control trillions of dollars, and where the free marketplace is gone, where you can't start a restaurant anymore, you can't start your own business anymore, where the door's shut to young people. And he wants to end the corruption. That's why he has such appeal among Hispanics. And I couldn't figure out why the Hispanics were voting for Ron Paul. I could understand the youth. So I quizzed them at many of these conventions. When I see a Hispanic, I would go up to them immediately, start talking to them. They're all Ron Paul. I don't think I've met a Hispanic who wasn't for Ron Paul at these state conventions. I said, why do you support Ron Paul? Turns out it's the same thing as the youth. Their story would be something like, well, my family came from El Salvador. We've got a lot of corruption in El Salvador. We got here, the American dream, and now we find out it's just as bad in America. It's just a different type of corruption as it was in El Salvador. Why did we come here? And that's what it is. It's to the young people or Hispanics, it's the loss of the American dream. It's a corruption of the process. Some people are gaming the system and they're making money. And what's ruined it for the rest of us is they used to let us, at least we could make money on real estate. We could buy a house and then save our money and buy a better house, and it would go up in value and buy another house. That was our ticket to the middle class. Now it's like the Middle Ages. We get a cow, and we better be happy with that cow, but we'll never be rich. And our cow is a big screen TV and access to the internet, and they'll take the internet away as soon as they can. That's all we get. We can't be rich. We are going to be poor, and we got to pay taxes.
Well, what's even worse is we are becoming the cow, and that's, I think, really the scary part. So as we move forward, then obviously you can't tell us specifically what the strategy is, and you can't respond to other people's strategy. But people are looking for some sort of direction because they are such loyal followers of this campaign. What do you want people to do now? I mean, before the message was, hey, we're not going to be campaigning in the media for the popular vote, we're going for the delegates. What is the message between now and Tampa? What do you want people to be doing? What do you want the strategy to be moving forward? There obviously has to be something that people who want to help can continually help with.
I would say, I don't know. I mean, they can do whatever they want. I'm going to be loyal to Ron Paul. You know, Gandhi taught this cycle, and let me see if I can remember it right. It was success leads to success leads to disunity. Disunity leads to failure. Failure leads to unity. Unity leads to success. And round it goes. When people can be united, they can be successful. When they're successful, they they break up and become disunited. When they're disunited, they fail. They become poor. And when they're poor, they once again come together and unite. And so it continually goes in this cycle. And his whole object was to freeze it long enough to get independence for India from Great Britain, was to stay together long enough. And when the poverty, let's see, it wasn't, the word he didn't use was poverty, it was, I'm going to have to look it up. Somebody can Google it and see. But when the pain is bad enough, when the poverty is bad enough, people will unite. They'll come together. And when they unite, they'll have success. And so I would urge people to not divide, to remain patient and to remain calm and to stick with Ron Paul, to be united. I hear people criticize a campaign. I got to tell you, if you think this is a poorly run campaign, you should have seen some of the ones I've been on. I've been on 7 presidential campaigns. This was pretty impressive. And I know Jesse Benton and John Tate gets criticism, but I've got to tell you, the people that ran the Mitt Romney campaign, he couldn't even take the delegates in his own home state of Massachusetts. And the people that ran the Rick Santorum campaign could. He couldn't get on the ballot. In his home state of Pennsylvania, there are 2 or 3 districts where he didn't have any delegates running. And in Illinois, he had slots that were empty. He couldn't get on the ballot in Virginia. Gingrich couldn't get on the ballot in Virginia. He had delegates sitting there that were his to take, and Washington couldn't get anybody to show up to take the slots. So people who are displeased with how this campaign's run, I can tell you, I've seen a lot worse. And
that's also a testament to the grassroots, people out here who did all this work too.
That's right, very, very much so. And Rand, the criticism that Rand had, if we've got a chance for Rand to become president of the United States, it's worth it. I know people. They say, well, we don't want to compromise. He should run as a vice president with Gary Johnson, or he should start a third party, or all these other things. He's a traitor because he endorsed the nominee. That's how the neocons, that's how the liberal Republicans have been elected. When Barry Goldwater was defeated in 1964, that election cycle, Richard Nixon campaigned vigorously for him all across the United States. For every congressional candidate and for every gubernatorial and senatorial candidate, Richard Nixon was out there when other Republicans were saying, this thing's going down in blazes, Goldwater's a nut, I'm out of here, I don't want anything to do with it. And 4 years later, Richard Nixon was president of the United States. That's how politics is played. And Rand Paul is different. He actually has a chance to become president. And, the Bible teaches stewardship, being good steward of what you have. Whatever it is, whatever gift you've been given, it's precious, and you have a responsibility to take good care of it. And he's been given an opportunity to become president. And I would love that.
Well, hold on, but that leads to a very interesting question. You keep referring to, and I'm not going to weigh in on the Rand controversy because to me it's fairly irrelevant, but you weighed in and said, he has a chance to be president. How does he have this chance to be president? Do you know that he's going to be on the ticket? Do you already know that he's going to have a place in the administration? And if so, where is that allegiance from the RNC? Because what we've seen from the RNC towards Rand has actually been the exact opposite. They spent money to actively campaign against him. So is there some deal that we weren't aware of where Rand is getting a position within this administration?
No, but there's no way that he's going to win the Republican. If he won the Republican nomination, if Rand Paul did not endorse the nominee, like all the other candidates except Ron has done, if he did not endorse the nominee, and 4 years from now, if Obama's reelected, and 4 years from now, the country awakened to this message that we're talking about, and Rand Paul ran for president, and he won, there would be senators and governors and congressmen, some of them, who wouldn't support him in the general election because they said, you didn't support Mitt Romney, I don't want anything to do with this, and let it go down in flames. But they can't do that now. They would have to support him.
So he was pretty much doing it just to play politics because he had to. He didn't look very happy when he was up there, I have to be honest. So that's good to hear from your.
Well, I don't know. I don't know why I did it because I wasn't privy to his counsel on it. I know that he cares very much about the cause of liberty. I'm very impressed with him. I compare him to any other senator, and there's just no comparison, in my opinion. And if he had a chance at being president, he could actually get some things done, that he could start moving this country, turn it around. So I would love to be able to live to see that happen. But to do that, he has to be Joe Republican, you know.
I have everybody down in the chat asking about Paul Festival, because we're all going to go be down there, and everyone's asking if Ron or you or anyone's going to be at Paul Festival. And Ron, Jesse came out and said we will never go to an event that's not sponsored by the campaign, and we're all down there for him and for the cause of liberty. And do you think there's a chance that there might be a a stop there or something?
I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. I know Dr. Paul's trying to figure out just what the right thing to do is. Dr. Paul has to be responsible for his name and how his name is used. And just like you do, like you and I do, we have to do that too. We can't just go online and see somebody's using our name and saying something or claiming something. We have a responsibility towards that. So I don't know what they have planned or who they've invited or and who they haven't invited and all the details of it to be able to speak intelligently on it. And I'm sure he doesn't know yet either. But so that remains to be seen. But so many people are interested in and want to go down there, I suspect that he will respond to that. And but I get back to this Gandhi illustration. Things have to be really, really bad before people unite. And when they're good, people divide. They split up. They fight over the loot. But when things are really bad, when you've had enough, then you're willing to work together and work each other. And I urge everybody to be patient and hang tight and wait and see what Dr. Paul's decisions are about some of these things. And back to Rand, let me just say this. If Dr. Paul had not run for president in the Republican Party, I'd have never heard of him. And I saw him in the presidential debates, the Republican presidential debates, and I was blown away. I had this little piece of information about Iraq that I knew personally, and I saw him talking. I thought, who is this guy? How's he getting away with this? And a lot of people in the movement didn't like the fact they felt he compromised by competing as a Republican candidate, but it was the best thing he ever did, I believe, or I'd have never known about him. So in the same way, Rand is positioning himself to be someone who could run for president and win. And I don't begrudge him that. I think that's wise. I think it would be wrong for him, even if he's criticized for it, I think it'd be wrong for him not to be a wise steward of that opportunity and give it his best. Too much is at stake.
Agreed. There's a lot of people asking, wow, we have a lot of questions down here. People, hold on, we need Ron. Oh yeah, so when's the last time you spoke with Ron Paul directly?
A few days ago.
And is he liking all this excitement? Is he happy about it? What does he think? Is he just relaxing? What's on his mind? Do you have any idea?
I really like Ron Paul. He's guileless. I urged him in the debates to punch back I said, you know what's going to happen. You know they aren't going to come to you. They're going to go to everybody else. So when they finally come to you, knock it out of the park, fight back, hit them for it. And say, I don't care what you think of Ron Paul, you owe those millions of people who want to end these wars and who want to end this cronyism and end this secrecy of the monetary system and open up the free markets. You owe them the respect of giving me the time to speak for them. I urge that, but he is he's an eternal optimist, and he's kind to people, and that's just his personality. And I guess now, having seen him in operation, I wouldn't change it. That's the way he is. So we're all out here, we're all scrappers and fighters, and he's this kindly old country doctor, I call him, this professor who sees these issues without losing his temper, without becoming bitter over it all. And I don't know how he's carried it for 22 years. I think that's probably part of the secret, is he doesn't take it personal.
When did you actually find out about him? Because you said if you hadn't seen the debates, was it the first 2008 campaign, or was it later on?
It was a 2008 campaign.
Okay.
I was watching the debate, and I thought, who is this guy?
That's awesome.
I thought, this blows me away. How's he getting away with this? How can he say this? Oh, I saw a replay of it over breakfast, and I spit the Cheerios out of my nose when he started talking. I was so surprised at what he was saying. And then I started reading his positions, and I said, well, this guy's got a chance, but he's going to have to change his position on drugs. He's going to have to change his position. I went down the line, all these things he's going to have to change his position on. Instead, I've changed my position on all of those things.
That's awesome. Doug, what about you? Will you come down to Paul Fest and speak?
Well, I would love to come down there. It depends on what I have to do for the campaign and the dates and how they overlap, because we'll have delegates there on the ground, and there's committee meetings and all that sort of thing. But if it can be worked out, I'll be glad to do it.
Go ahead, Josh, you go.
Well, I was going to say, since you were talking about loyalty to Ron Paul, and that is only exemplified by carrying on what has brought us to this point so far, then that loyalty would mean to continue on that fight, to continue on presenting the information that has converted so many people, just like it has you. I mean, obviously, once we get to this point, there's no going back to the traditional form of the RNC. So if we're going to continue that form of loyalty from now until, well, beyond the election cycle in reality, then we have to continue fighting for the principles that Dr. Paul has fought for, and realize that it's us. It's us that has gotten us here. So, again, back to that question that didn't really have an answer. What do you want us to do between now and August to help you in that effort? Because people are going to ask, and once we're done with this, they're going to say, oh, but Josh, what do we actually do? How can we help their effort if they're not telling us what that effort is? And we understand strategy, but what can we do between now and then?
Well,
go ahead.
Well, you paraphrased what I said. You said to be loyal forever or whatever. No, we're talking about a presidential campaign, and I expect I would urge everyone to be loyal through this presidential campaign, through the convention. Our first loyalty is to the U.S. Constitution, and right. That's where all of us, our loyalty is. If Dr. Paul veered away from the U.S. Constitution, I wouldn't expect people to be loyal to him. But he has given 22 years of his life putting the Constitution forward in a way that many of the rest of us can't compete with. So he surely deserves a little patience and a little loyalty leading up to this convention this summer. That's my point. I don't mean that if Dr. Paul suddenly decides he's going to veer left or he's going to go here or there, that we all have to follow him. That's not my point at all. Our loyalties to the Constitution, he's the one that's awakened us to these truths. There's no going back. Our commitment is to these truths, not just to him, but there is a commitment to him as the father of this liberty movement and as a campaign candidate for president. There is a commitment to stick with him through this convention and not just rip the movement apart and tear it apart and divide the spoils here or there, but to stick together, because unity brings success. And
that's awesome. You're absolutely right. There are people actually asking, you talked about the troops. What do you think about the troops march on the RNC that's being organized?
I don't know the details of it.
They're just a bunch of veterans and active duty military. They're going to do what they did in the March on Washington, where they marched to the White House and they stood in silence for each death that has happened through the wars. And it's going to be hundreds and hundreds and maybe even thousands and thousands of troops walking down, marching to the RNC in that same fashion.
Fascinating. Yeah, that's fascinating. I would encourage anybody who's planning anything to try to vet it with the campaign, so that Dr. Paul, what Dr. Paul's doing, his message and his plans aren't unintentionally disrupted or hurt, because it's only a couple of months. I'm looking at my calendar here on the wall. It's all going to be over in a couple of months. So then somebody else may run for president.
I really like the way you're talking, because finally I'm hearing optimism and I'm not hearing giving up. And everything that you're saying is leading me to believe that you really kind of do feel that there is a chance that he might be able to walk away with the nomination or something even more important than that. And it's really awesome, and thank you for that.
You're welcome. Well, I have believed all along that this convention will be an important echo chamber to our own American media, because the American media is compromised by the money, the Federal Reserve money. I mean, here's a candidate, Dr. Paul, who wants the Federal Reserve to be transparent. He wants us to know how much money they're going to create and to whom it's given. That's all. And we know from the partial audit we had that huge amounts of money go to these corporations that own some of these television companies, and they go to major companies that advertise interest-free loans of hundreds of millions of dollars to companies that advertise on these television stations. And so they have tremendous power, tremendous say, and Dr. Paul has taken on this whole thing. And it's been a pretty dramatic challenge, And
does he have 5 states, Doug?
That's what I was going to ask too.
Does he have 5 states? Does he have a plurality? Does he have those 5 states to be on the ballot?
I can't say that. And under Rule 40, he doesn't need to have a majority in 5 states. You know
Amen.
that. So.
Thank you.
Now that just summed up 49 minutes, Doug. You just took 49 minutes of dropping hints and putting things between the lines, and you just gave hope to everybody in this room, because that's exactly what they've been thinking, regardless of what the mainstream media or even other representatives have said. So thank you so much.
Just keep in mind, the RNC can do what they want. If people in Washington can do what they want with the U.S. Constitution, keep in mind what they can do with their country club rules, what they can do.
Thanks, Doug. I don't want to take up too much more of your time. Are you open for maybe one more question?
Okay.
Anybody? There's one last question that we're going to ask. Everyone's so excited. I can't even catch a question. The chat room's going so quick, Doug. I don't know if you can catch one down there. Ay, 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 ay. Okay, you know what? Thank you. Unless you can catch a question, I don't want to keep you for the rest of the night, but um, this was great.
It was great. I think it was really great, and I thank you, Doug, for joining us. This was awesome.
Don't forget, you've got logic and you've got truth on your side. So if you're patient, people like me, who I worked for the Bush family, I was an establishment Republican, had Gerald Ford in my home 2 different times on 2 different occasions, and uh, people like me can be won over because it's the truth of your message and it's the logic of your message. And if you're patient and you want to win, you don't want to suffer and lose, you want to win. So you certainly don't want to compromise to win, but you've got to be willing to fight without your hands tied behind your back. And that means a willingness to understand how the political game is played and to play it. And we have certainly done a better job at it this cycle than we did last cycle.
Yeah.
We gave them a run for their money. And considering what we're up against, what we were up against and are up against, is pretty impressive. I was going to say that echo chamber we wanted is all the foreign media are going to be here for Tampa. Mm-hmm. So they're going to, and many of these journalists in other countries are very impressed with Dr. Paul. Some from Britain and France, they'll have their marching orders. They depend on the central bank there. They depend on our own Federal Reserve to bail them out. So they'll have marching orders dictated from their executives. But journalists from other countries of the world, many of them, are, well, people here in America criticize Ron Paul as kooky. They think he's the only American who makes sense. He's saying America should mind her own business and quit bombing people. And in Holland, there's a little joke that makes the rounds that says there are 2 ways for an American to become an isolationist. One of them is not to talk to anybody, and the other one is to bomb everybody. And that's how America's viewed. And Ron Paul's the only sane person that they see in American politics. And when those journalists descend on Tampa, it'll be the most international event outside of the Olympics for the next decade. We want our own American media to be shamed by their good coverage of Dr. Paul and his message. So that's why we hope there will be unity and cooperation and dignity, and we can get this message out. Thanks for what you're doing, Tracy, and for what you're doing, Josh.
Thanks for being here. We hope you come back again next time.
You're welcome. Thanks. Me too.
Bye, Doug.
Bye-bye.
Thanks a lot.
Bye-bye. You're welcome.
So that was amazing.
Yeah, that was pretty good. I loved the last 5 minutes of it, actually.
Yeah, that was crazy. It was really great. Hey, Josh.
Go ahead.
You pretty much gave everybody in this room a reason to wake up in the morning and jump up for joy.
I think so, yeah. I think so. And I think one of the really interesting things is he admitted, it's not over. And I get it. I read the comments. Josh, read between the lines. No, I get that. I get it. That's why I'm here, because I got between the lines. But what we really needed was that admission, it's not over until it's over. So they just needed somebody to say it. So when you have Doug Wead come out and say, hey, it's not over, that I think gave hope to a lot of people.
That was, geez, awesome. Just awesome.